Alright, here we are on the play. So, interesting. A 5-land hand. 5 lands is a lot of lands in this deck. But we do have a Llanowar Elves as our 1-drop, and then Collected Company, arguably the best spell in our deck. So, yeah, alright, let's go with it. Definitely don't want to draw more lands, but we're only playing 18 of them total in the deck, so 5-land hands are pretty rare. Most of them are mulligans, but since we have a Collected Company, which we can potentially cast on turn 3, I think it's a good enough reason to keep. And it looks like we're playing a blue-red deck of some sort. We see a Serum Visions there. And okay, pretty good draw for us actually. Dwinnen's Elite. So, yep, just gonna go ahead and run it out there. And assuming our Llanowar Elves survives, we will be trying to cast Collected Company next turn. Now we'll see if this is Storm or some sort of a Delver deck, potentially. We don't really know. So, what we're playing against is a bit of a mystery at this point. But I think we want to just get in with the Elite and the token, leaving up Collected Company. And our opponent could... Okay, so it looks like blue, white, red of some sort. Here is Timely Reinforcements. That's pretty good. So, a blue, white, red deck. We thought looked like just straight blue, red. It's actually blue, white, red. So, some sort of blue, white, red control deck. So, still going to cast the Collecting Company here. Timely Reinforcements was pretty good for our opponent, but look here, all of a sudden we have an Azuri, and this could just be... This is huge, this Azuri. We're just going to get Shaman of the Pack and Azuri. We might actually be able to win next turn without having actually done the math, but our opponent's going to take 5 here, and we are able to activate Nykthos to produce a total of 5. So yeah, I believe our opponent is actually dead, which is absurd. This is turn 4 we're doing this, but definitely going to attack with everything. And yeah, I mean, we can give all of our creatures +3/+3 and trample. And so our opponent can block 3 damage worth, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. So, yep. Gonna go ahead and activate Nykthos. For good measure, we'll pump a Llanowar Elf. And yep, this should be game 1. So, yeah, pretty absurd Collected Company. It looked kind of rough for us when our opponent played the Timely Reinforcement. But yeah, our opponent actually went down to -7 life that turn. So, that was pretty great. So, alright, moving on to game 2. We know we're up against blue, white, red control. We saw a Timely Reinforcements and a Serum Visions. That's it. That's all our opponent played that game. So we have to be worried about sweepers and removal, even though we did not see it. But Evolutionary Leap and Kitchen Finks are pretty reasonable adds. So is Scavenging Ooze. And I don't think we need too much more than that. So we're just going to go ahead and shave some of our smaller elves here. And we're still going to keep in a lot of the heavy hitters. the late game Elves. But normally, after board, a couple Nettle Sentinels just end up getting shaved, so seems reasonable enough. So, yep, gonna submit this. And we are gonna be on the draw, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We've got a 1-land hand here and 2 mana elves, so pretty much any hand with 1 land and 2 mana elves you are just going to keep. So we're going to do that. And unfortunately we are playing against a deck with a lot of removals, so it's definitely within the realm of possibility that these elves are going to die, these early mana elves. But I'm just going to search for a basic forest and play an Elvish Mystic. Basically, Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystic are essentially the same card. So, okay, our opponent has both their colors, but it looks like, once again, that our opponent is not going to kill or use an early removal spell, which is interesting. This could mean that the plan is to once again cast Timely Reinforcements against us. So, we've got a couple of options. Elvish Visionary is a reasonable play. It could get remanded, but it's also the play that protects us the most against a sweeper. So, our opponent could have something like an Anger of the Gods, and the question is, can we play around that? I think we do want to try to play this Visionary. If it gets remanded or mana leaked, then so be it. But okay, so it did get remanded. So it ended up being not the play we really wanted to make, casting the Visionary. We probably, if we could go back here, would play the Llanowar Elves, but it's fine. And so here our opponents once again is shipping the turn. And we're up to 8 cards again. We definitely don't want this Visionary to get remanded again. So we probably at this point want to start committing more resources to the board. So let's try to get this Llanowar Elves into play. And yep, if our opponent has a Wrath effect here, then so be it. We're not in a great spot because we only have 1 land, so we can't afford to play around all that much. And if we don't play 2 threats here, our opponent could just play something like Nahiri, and we wouldn't be able to pressure it at all, essentially. So we're basically vulnerable to a lot of cards our opponent could have, but we still want to make our opponent have those cards. And so that's why we're just going to commit both of our 1 mana elves here in this scenario. And it could also be that our opponent doesn't have double red for an Anger of the Gods, because we see the lands on our opponent's side are 3 blue-white lands and only 1 red one. So we are going to get to untap here, it looks like, although this Path to Exile is interesting. So our opponent's attempting to path the Heritage Druid on upkeep, but we now have the option of casting Collected Company, or trying to cast Collected Company. So it's a pretty close decision. We have to think our opponent might have counters in hand, but I think we still want to just try to cast the Coco here. And it makes sense that our opponent is making this play during our upkeep. So it looks like the Collected Company resolved. That's good news. And so we're going to find a Shaman of the Pack and an Elvish Archdruid here. So our opponent is going to go down to 14, and now we have a legitimate board presence for sure. So our opponent's going to need probably something like an Anger at this point to really set us back. Or just multiple. Snapcaster Path would be okay. Clearly our biggest threat in terms of creatures on the board is the Elvish Archdruid. So that's, if we're able to untap with this Archdruid, we'll be in a great spot. Most likely. But it's unclear what exactly is going on in the game, because once again, like game 1, our opponents only cast 2 spells. We haven't done that much either, but we've done more than our opponent. Okay, so it is going to be a Snapcaster Mage. It's going to end up going on the path. The path is going to hit our Elvish Archdruid. And yeah, it looks like our opponent is now scared of us having Coco because they're doing this on their main phase. But that's going to give us another land for our next turn, which most likely is going to be useful. And it could be once again that our opponent is stuck on single red here with something like an Anger of the Gods in hand. So, a few different options here. Personally, I think we actually want to... Well, we have a few options for sure. We can actually play the Archdruid and try to make some headway by just attacking our opponent. But we can also play this Dwindens Elite along with the Shaman of the Pack and get in a bunch of damage. So, yeah, definitely some good options at this stage. I think we want to go with the Dwindens Elite play. And, okay, so it looks like our opponent does have Spell Snare for the Dwindens Elite. So that's pretty good. So now we might have to reevaluate. Since the Dwindens Elite didn't resolve, I think now we want to actually go with our Archdruid. And that's going to allow us to be able to attack here with our Shaman. And we'll see if our opponent elects to chump block here. I don't think our opponent has another path the way the game played out. And it looks like they are actually going to take the 4-point hit here from the Shaman. So not a bad turn for us. Our opponent used a counterspell, and we were able to get down the Dwindens Elite. So, okay, here our opponent is going to cast Nahiri. So that was a card we were concerned about earlier in the game, and now it's coming down. And it looks like our Shaman is going to bite the dust, but we have creatures in play that can potentially pressure this Nahiri. So that's definitely something to consider. So we're actually pretty close to being able to play Azuri and then activate it. We actually could do that. So it's something to keep in mind. There's actually a bunch of nice options here. And being able to tap the Archdruid for more mana than we would normally be able to, we're going to want to play Elves pre-combat here, and then consider if we want to go after the Nahiri or not. So I think we just want to lead here on Elvish Visionary, actually. And we'll see if our opponent has another counterspell. It looks like the answer is no. So our opponent does not have counter magic for the Elvish Visionary. So now we're just going to go ahead and activate the Archdruid, and we drew another Visionary. So I like actually just playing it out right now. And it's going to let us cantrip again. Cantripping is always nice, because if these Visionaries die, it's not that big of an issue. And now we can go ahead and try to cast this Shaman of the Pack for 6 life total. And so this puts our opponent all the way down to 4, which is pretty significant here. So the question is, how do we want to use these Llanowar Elves? Do we want to go at the Nahiri and try to kill that? Or do we feel like putting our opponent down to 2 would be worth it? And I think we want to go after the Nahiri. It gives our opponent one more draw, basically, to try to find whatever they're looking for, if it's something like an Anger of the Gods. So, to me, that makes the most sense. Let's go for that line. And, okay, it's going to be another Snapcaster Mage. So, both of these Snapcaster Mages are going to be blocking the Llanowar Elves. And so that is going to mean that our Elvish Archdruid could get shot down by Nahiri. But if that happens, then the Nahiri is going to be gone. So, pretty happy with our board, the board state. It's pretty in our favor at the moment. So, we'll see. Our opponent's only got 2 cards in hand. And we'll see what they can come up with. But this is definitely going to be a critical turn. So, rather than loot rather than get rid of our Archdruid, our opponent is electing to loot. Emrakul was the discard, and then, yep, it looks like our opponent doesn't have it, so that's going to be the match.